Welcome to the Cards Hub Postgame Show, or as we like to call it tonight, the Cardiac Hub Postgame Show. The Cardinals win 4-3 in their series opener against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Pelikan and Stefan Caray here. Of course, all content here on Sports Hub STL is provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. And this show is presented by Hot Shots. Hot Shots is one of the best partners that we have here at Sports Hub STL. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But a 4-3 win to the Cardinals where they really outlasted the Arizona Diamondbacks, one of the best pitching performances by Zac Gallen this season, who had struggled by and large here in 2025.
Yeah, Stefan. I mean, it's obvious with Gallen. I mean, this isn't the kind of walk year that he's wanting to have so far. Obviously setting himself up for a nice payday in free agency. Looked really, really good right out of the chute, right? Like, the strike zone a little bit big tonight, thanks to St. Louis and Ron Kulpa behind the plate. And he was taking advantage of that, nibbling at the edges. Obviously, Ollie Marmol didn't really agree with too much of what he saw from Ron Kulpa tonight. That's why his night was over in the fourth inning, I believe. But this is the case so often with so many of the Cardinals pitchers earlier in the year when they were struggling, is it was one inning that ended up getting them. And with Zac Gallen, the control just started fading in that sixth inning. And, I laugh about this because I coach a little league team, and when you walk guys, it ends up becoming a problem. And Zac Gallen's control in the sixth inning became the problem, right? And you can't leave it up to bases loaded issue. You can't leave it up to Alek Thomas to make a great catch on the track when Arenado hit that ball. Obviously the big shot of the game, and pretty much a self-inflicted wound for Zac Allen, who otherwise pitched a really nice game. But again, I mean, it's been the story of his season, just not being able to push his team over the hump. And, Cardinals certainly capitalized, and great for Nolan Arenado. I mean, a guy who, asked to be moved down in the lineup earlier in the week. And again, I think everybody in St. Louis pretty much agreed with his assessment of where he's been. So the fact that he's able to come up with such a huge hit in a big game, coming off a couple of straight losses, I mean, I feel really good for Nolan Arenado tonight. Played a great game at third base as well. So good win all around, hard fought win. Arizona is a very good club. So, this is a good way to get back on the winning side of things.
The Cardinals have now won 14 of their last 18. Let's continue with the point about Nolan Arenado. You saw on Apple TV in the post-game interview, he was as accountable as anyone. He talked about his own struggles at the plate and how good it felt to hit that ball into left center field. He thought it was gone off the bat, was basically
you could tell
he was insinuating. Yeah, but Alek Thomas is one of the premier center fielders defensively in Major League Baseball. If he doesn't collide with the wall, he probably catches that ball. And who knows, maybe the Diamondbacks win that game. But Arenado needed that. And for him to go out and have that swing, you expect it to maybe pay some dividends moving forward for this club in that number 6 spot in the order.
Well, you sure hope so. And it's funny because, Stefan, I mean, like, I look at Arenado and, heading into the offseason, obviously, John Mozeliak's first, second, and third goal was to trade Nolan Arenado off this team. And, we look at where he is as a player at this point in time in his career. And, clearly there's something left in the tank. Is he going to be the guy ever again that was a, perennial near triple crown threat in Colorado? Even the first few years in St. Louis, obviously a guy who was a, silver slugger caliber kind of guy. And now we look at him and like, I don't want this to sound insulting, but maybe he is a 6th place hitter in this lineup. I mean, with Wilson Contreras slugging, and obviously we can talk about him momentarily with the back. That's not a good thing that he was scratched as late as he was in the game today. But, I think we were all witnessing the just sort of the burgeoning beginning of Ivan Herrera's career as a high level major league hitter. The guy just does it all well at the batter's box. So, when we're sitting there and we're stacking our 1 through 9 every day with this team, boy, I don't know if Nolan Arenado has enough in his tank to sit there and say, I belong in the middle of this lineup anymore, and so again, I mean, you get you get quality at bats, you get something good out of the 6 hole with Arenado doing what he's doing now. And maybe he'll take a little pressure off himself, but the good news is for this team that there are guys who are showing that they are middle of the order caliber guys. So, again, if this turns into Nolan Arenado's swan song in this town, maybe they, I know he's got several years on his contract after this, but, he clearly is providing value to this team defensively as a leader, that sort of thing. But I mean, again, maybe he is your 6th or 7th place hitter in this lineup. And that's a good thing because that shows that people that we weren't 100% sure of are producing at a level that, makes them worthy of that spot in the order.
Well, Nolan Arenado has a no trade clause. he has said no to a couple of the suitors that have wanted to trade for him because he loves to be here. And I think that he has done a fair amount of sacrificing, even if it's something that he isn't comfortable with, to help make this team better. So he deserves a lot of the credit. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the game plan for the Cardinals. Though they were struggling through the first 5 innings against Zac Gallen, and it felt like it was going to be, oh, here we go again. Former Cardinals farmhand comes back to town and shoves against St. Louis. That wasn't the case in the 6th. They finally picked up on the knuckle curve, which is the calling card of Gallen. And once that happened, they weren't swinging at it. They were walking. They were getting on base. And if this team gets on base with the speed that they have, they're going to win ball games.
Yeah. And, again, I mean, like to your point, I've said a lot this year that this team isn't slugging good enough to be a real contender. The truth is they're slugging pretty well. I mean, they are 12th in baseball in slugging, 6th in the National League. And you know what? Again, this is all coming around. It was mentioned during the broadcast, but this team is striking out 2% below average, the average number in Major League Baseball. Brant Brown's fingerprints are on this team offensively at this point in time. And we have seen this happen with this group numerous times. They can win games in different ways. Tonight it was patience, right? You get the start from Mikolas, which is just becoming common at this point in time for him to go out and throw 6 innings of very, very solid ball. But like we said, he did, the Cardinals outweighed. The at-bats weren't fantastic early in the game. Gallen was cruising for a while. But like you said, whatever it was, if they picked up the knuckle curve, they figured out not to swing at that, the zone got a little bit tighter. Whatever it ends up being, the point is that they were doing what it needed. I mean, again, this is where I think so many people in this city are surprised, because I don't think that people thought this team was going to be as resilient in finding different ways to win baseball games. I think a lot of people thought there were serious questions with your rotation, with your bullpen, with your lineup. And you know what? I mean, we can sit here, we're past the quarter pole of this season. We're starting to get close to a third of the way through this year. And I mean, there's really nothing that you can look at with this team and say, glaring weakness, has been awful the whole time. They've been good in a lot of areas. And the offense, again, this has to be, to be an opposing pitcher against this team has to be a bit frustrating, because 1 through 9, I mean, and again, I don't want to pick on Nolan Gorman. If we don't say his name the rest of the night, so be it. But everybody else put together pretty strong at bats tonight, and that eventually plays, right? So, the Cardinals are making guys throw a lot of pitches this year. That's going to end up being a good thing. Some teams' bullpens are good enough that they're happy to walk away from a starter in the 5th inning. But for the most part, the Cardinals are doing the things you have to do to win. I mean, this feels a lot like, in some ways, I'm not going to sit here and crown them as a perennial division champion, but this feels like Tony La Russa baseball, where, the hard 9, I mean, just sitting there and figuring out ways to win games. And, so again, I for somebody who was fine with the plan, but would have traded every single one you could have. I mean, I would have had Helsley out the door long ago. Give this team a ton of credit, because they just continue to find ways to win games, which is what good teams do. And then you look on the other side, and it's not Arizona, but so many of these other teams in baseball find ways to lose games. And that's what the Cardinals did the last couple of years. So give this team a ton of credit for fighting and figuring out ways to get to a tough pitcher, to squeeze that win out. I mean, gosh, right. Helsley tonight. I mean, I know it's a whole separate, but hey, the 2-run homer, great. It's great to give up 2-run homers when you got a 3-run lead. Point being, they are figuring out ways to win. That's what good teams do.
They certainly do that. And you made a point about strike zones. You made a point about Tony La Russa. We'll touch on those subjects in just a moment. But we have an invitation for all of our viewers here on the Sports Hub STL YouTube page. Sports Hub STL postgame shows are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, who invite you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st, to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. Prizes will be given away all day. There's a dart tournament at noon, a bags tournament at 2, plus a chance to win Hot Shots tacos for a year. Congratulations to Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis is home for all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. This is the Cards Hub postgame show. Chris Pelikan, Stefan Caray wrapping up on a 4-3 Cardinals victory in game number 1 of the series against the Diamondbacks. Now, you mentioned the strike zone. Ollie Marmol tossed from the game early, but what a job by the bench coach Daniel Descalso to carry this team the rest of the way, to make the right decisions out of the bullpen, to pull his defenders at the right time and put in his A defensive lineup. He had a great managerial game, and like you said, resemblant of Tony La Russa. It's not typically the helmsman for the Cardinals, but that's how talented and deep this staff is for St. Louis in 2025.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I mean, I look at that and there's always this great discussion, you know, and I'd love to have this with managers, you know, anyone. And they talked about this on the broadcast tonight. So clearly, and one of our posters, Samuel Howe, just mentioned that was not strike three on Ivan Herrera. It was not even remotely close, right? Like, and I'm waiting for him to tap his head, right? Like, let's go ahead and get the replay on that one. The question becomes, is it worth it to get your manager thrown out of a game, you know, to show that you're quote unquote standing up for your guy, right? Like, and they were talking to Eric Fetty during that, and Fetty's like, heck yeah, it gets us pumped up when our manager gets run if he's, you know, backing us up. So it's like, you know, part of me is like, I mean, I don't know that it's worth it to get thrown out over balls and strikes. And, you know, Ron Kulpa did not have a real long fuse tonight. That's a whole nother topic for a different day, but I did notice, you know, my lip reading skills are not fantastic, but at the end of the argument, you could see Marmol saying to Kulpa, grow up, right? And Ron Kulpa, St. Louis native, has been an umpire for 30 plus years. I mean, he's probably in his 60s. He's getting told to grow up because I guess for whatever reason, he was quick with the hook, but, you know, to the point, it wasn't immediate, but obviously the team rallied around it to a degree, right? I mean, and it took him another inning or two to get going offensively, but, you know, absolutely. And, you know, there's a lot to go over with this. And one of the things that I'd be interested in knowing your take, and I still think that, you know, when managers get thrown out, they're still sending their notes to, you know, texting or shooting through the bullpen phone, what they want. I don't know if did Mikolas get pulled a little quick tonight? That's my one question, right? He's at sub, I think he was at 81 pitches maybe through the sixth inning. And he was cruising, you know, and I know part of it is like, you know, you wanted to get these guys work. They haven't worked in a couple of days, sort of based on, you know, the losing the games. Helsley hadn't worked in a week. So they wanted to set it up and get Romero his inning and get Leahy his inning and that sort of thing. But, you know, part of me too is like, you know, and again, this thing all worked out perfectly. Romero looked good. Leahy looked good for the most part. Helsley, you know, got the job done. You know, but yeah, you know, and Daniel Descalso to everybody around this place knows this is a guy who is, you know, a fan favorite because he was one of those guys who came and did anything he ever was asked to do as a player. And so it's not surprising he's got that bench. You know, the team respects him, the players respect him. And, you know, and with Ollie, it's like, hey, you know what, whatever it takes to get it done. I agree that the strike zone was awful tonight. I think it was pretty awful for both sides, you know? So, I mean, you know, Mikolas took advantage of some of them as well. But at the end of the day, you know, Ollie did what he thought he had to. Descalso managed a heck of a game. And, you know, anytime you come up with a win over a team like Arizona, that's just, you know, obviously going to be a perennial contender in that division, you know, kudos all around.
Yeah, it was great. And there are a couple points I want to respond to that you just made. They're all very, very good points. Now, the first one being, it was an even strike zone. There was a strikeout to Corbin Carroll that was about eye level that he was rung up on early in the game. You conveniently forget about that, but it was the situation for Herrera being down a run to not get that call that I think really infuriated people. Back to Descalso, something that people also forget is, where was Daniel Descalso before he became the bench coach of the Cardinals? Well, Daniel Descalso was in the front office for, guess who? The Arizona Diamondbacks. Mm-hmm. He was overseeing a lot of the players as they came up through the minor league ranks. I came in encounter with him several times when I was in Amarillo at AA, and he is as good of a baseball mind as you'll find in all of the major leagues. And another point that's important to note is that the Cardinals are beating really good teams. They're beating the Diamondbacks, yep. They're beating the Mets. But it all really started for me on an ejection. It started back in Cincinnati during that doubleheader when Ollie Marmol was tossed at Great American Ballpark. Now, Mike Claiborne would argue was in the doubleheader against the New York Mets, but I think things really turned around when they finally purged the doubleheader demon and won in the Queen City, won both games of the doubleheader. So I think that's been a huge turning point for them. Keeping Corbin Carroll quiet tonight was extremely huge. I've expressed my love for Corbin. He's one of my favorite people in the game. I'm sure he wouldn't like to hear from me right now, but he's one of those guys that if you texted him right now, he'd get right back to you. And he's a player that I hope gets a ton of hits, but not at the expense of a Cardinals victory. This is a really good baseball team in Absolutely. Arizona, and the Cardinals continue to play really good ball at home. Yeah,
no question about it. You know, it's you wish the Cubs would fall back a little bit. You know, they won their third straight tonight. They're almost 10 games over 5, or they're 11 games over 500 now, 31-20. You know, but again, to your point, it's a good discussion about Ollie, right? Like, I mean, Ollie gets the brunt of a lot of people's ire over the course of the last 2 years. You know, his first season was great, and then the Helsley blow up in the playoffs happens, that sort of thing. And so Ollie's gotten a lot of grief, and some of it self-inflicted. I still to this day don't know why they gave him an extension. It was a kind of a tone deaf time when the team wasn't doing much and they're struggling. And okay, we're going to extend the manager. It's usually, not the way that stuff goes. But at the end of the day, the guy deserves a ton of credit because there was nobody who really believed in this group. I mean, that's not just St. Louis people. They were the odds-on favorite to finish last in the National League Central, according to most of the betting markets, which is, where you go for a lot of the reality of the situations. And so, the fact that he has taken that somewhat of, that disrespect, I guess you could probably say, and parlayed it into really solid baseball, right? They're not winning by accident. I mean, you ask any guy from, Casey Stengel all the way to, nowadays, I mean, you win with great pitching and defense. They're fantastic with both those and with timely hitting, which is what they're getting. So, this team isn't a fluke at this point in time. And every time I come and do this show, we end up having a discussion about the future of this team. And it's just 2 weeks ago, I probably still would have said, see what the market is for Helsley, right? You look at the Phillies, and the Phillies just cannot catch a break in the back end of their bullpen, and they need somebody to stabilize it. And they've got a stable of really good young players that would be available, that'd be nice ads and trade. A couple of really good pitching prospects, that sort of thing. And, but now you're going, I mean, how do you break up any part of this group? Again, a third of the way through, they're in the wild card hunt. They're in the central hunt. They've been doing it with guts. They've been doing it, playing the game the right way. I understand that they're in a process here and they're talking about this retool and let's see what we have and the runway term. We hear that a lot, but boy, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know how you could look your fans in the face and trade Miles Mikolas and trade Steven Matz, who have been really, really good, trade Ryan Helsley. I mean, again, I'm the first one to say that I don't think that you go and trade JJ Weatherholt to go get, some rental players. I'm like, you don't mortgage any of your own future, but by the same token, I mean, we talk about players getting runway. I'm at the point with this team where I think they've earned their own runway as a group, right? Like let's not make any deals at this point in time. Either way, let's let this team do what they can do and let's see where it goes, because you know what? I mean, it's been fun. It's been good. It's been clean. I think the fans need to start showing up again. I mean, I will be back down there before long now that the kids are out of school, and I'm hoping that's a big thing. But at the end of the day, how can you not like this team? I mean, they're fun to watch. They do a lot of things right. So again, give them their runway, give this team its runway and see what it can do.
How can you not be romantic about Cardinals baseball? We got a whole lot to talk about here on the Cards Hub Postgame Show. Cardinals win 4-3 against the Diamondbacks. But if you didn't know already, baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select two or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports. For new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He's Chris Pelikan. I'm Stefan Caray. This is the Cards Hub Postgame Show on Sports Hub STL. This show is brought to you by Hot Shots, all content provided by DraftKings, as you just saw. Now, you touched on Miles Mikolas, and I think we would be doing a disservice to these fans if we didn't go into a little bit greater depth on what Miles has been able to do. Now, tonight, 6 innings, got the win, 4 hits, 1 run, a walk, 4 strikeouts. He's getting a lot more swing and miss, which has contributed to major success. But if you take away that Boston outing, where he gave up 8 earned runs in 2 2/3 back on April 6th, Mikolas would have a 2.22 ERA. You said earlier, hey, did you feel comfortable removing Mikolas from the game? For me, the answer is yes. And the reason why is I don't want to leave him in too long and him get hit hard third time through the order and then the mojo to slip away. If you can get him through 6 innings, get a quality start, and get him to continuously perform with 6 innings and 1 run, I think you'll take that with how good the bullpen's been recently.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because he just pitches in such a different way, right? Like, I mean, you are certainly not young enough, or not old enough, I'm sorry, to remember the way when Greg Maddux would do what he did. And,
I am old enough. I just have Benjamin Button's disease.
Fair. That's it. I just have disgusting old man disease. That's what I've got. But I do, you remember, you think about when Greg Maddux pitched, and Greg Maddux would have these hour and 15-minute complete game shutouts where he'd throw 86 pitches, right? And, the trend in baseball for 15 years at this point in time has been, the big arm guys who work deep into counts, the Blake Snells of the world, who are going to strike out 9 guys in a game, but he goes 5 innings and throws 105 pitches. Mikolas is just so stinking efficient. He throws so many strikes. He's so, and when he's right, he's painting the corners, the curveball's mixing in perfectly. And so, to your point, I know the analytics probably say Mikolas 3 times through is where all the fun starts, unraveling. So, again, it worked out fine. I look at him and like you said, Boston was the last time and it was terrible. But you think about that. How many guys have 2.2 ERAs, and I know that a lot of times there's people who have had one bad outing, it blows up the ERA, but Miles Mikolas, you can make a case, has been one of the best pitchers in the National League this year. And maybe it's because they're handling him a little bit differently. Maybe it's because, for whatever reason, but this is a guy who has sort of reinvented himself. And I don't want to say that because this is how vintage Miles Mikolas 5 years ago was the same guy he is now. Efficient, throwing strikes, hitting corners, that sort of thing. And so, again, it worked out very well. They love the way the back end of their bullpen is pitching right now. And this is with Phil Maton not even being right, so Kyle Leahy's been a gem of a find, Romero is what he is, and so again, all's well that ends well, but I still look at Miles Mikolas and say the way he pitches, he's got kind of that old school Levon Hernandez thing for me going where I feel good about 7 or 8 innings every single time with Mikolas just because of the fact that he's throwing strikes, and putting the ball in play, and he doesn't strike out. He's had his games, but he's not a double-digit strikeout guy. It's almost vintage Dave Duncan stuff. He doesn't throw the sinker like Duncan loved, but, he's a guy who puts the ball in play and lets the defense work. And, that formula is working for this team right now.
Well, the main issue for Mikolas, and I think you've heard it over and over again, was that he was throwing too many strikes over the past few seasons. And he was getting hit hard. That curveball, he was trying to use it as an out pitch. It would hang up in the zone, and he'd give up a lot of loud contact. Now, his longevity has been one of his main calling cards, getting to around 200 innings over the last few seasons, getting deep into games. I'm okay with him not reaching 200 innings this year if he's as efficient and effective as he's been here in 2025. And I think it's resonated throughout the rest of the rotation. One of the fans of the show just asked, do you think it's a coincidence that Mikolas is pitching this well in a contract year? I think it's a multifactored thing. One reason is he's being held accountable by the fans, which he has been the last few years. But I think he sees that this team is more capable than they were in past seasons. Your other veterans are holding themselves accountable. And also, it is a contract year. You want to keep playing in MLB, and I think he certainly will if he continues to do what he's doing. So I think Miles Mikolas is really proving some people wrong. He's turning the doubters into believers, and he is as good of an example of the 2025 St. Louis Cardinals as anyone. He is the physical manifestation of what we expected this team to be and what they really are when you look at them on a day-to-day basis.
Well, let's be clear. I would 100% agree that every single player plays better in a contract year, or at least is more focused. With Zac Gallen, he's probably losing himself money, with each start at this point in time. This is a guy who probably could have realistically asked for $150 million walking into this season. And I don't know if anyone's going to give him 5 or 6 years at this point with the way he's thrown this year. You look at Mikolas, though. Mikolas is he 36 or 37 at this point in time? He's not getting a big long-term contract, right? So, Mikolas is very much, I think it wouldn't have been a stretch had this year gone like last year that Miles Mikolas would have considered hanging the spikes up. But this is a late career renaissance with the guy. And you see that sometimes with guys, but I don't know that if the Cardinals hang on to Mikolas and he pitches this well the entire season, I can't fathom that there's a long line of teams waiting to give him a 4-year contract after this year. He's going to get 1 year probably. Maybe it's with the Cardinals, depending on kind of how things shake out in their rotation. But again, the guy has been inconsistent enough to, at this point in his career, he's old enough that this isn't the kind of person that a team's going to go invest a lot of years in and money. That's just, I think the honest truth on it. So with that in mind, you want him to continue to succeed with the Cardinals, because obviously that'll push, that'll help the team. He is the kind of guy, though, that is going to be very attractive if he continues this to a lot of teams, because as you well know, kind of once we get close to that trade deadline, somebody who can go out there and give you 6 solid every night, every 5th day. I mean, that is a very valuable commodity. There are, you look at what Jordan Montgomery did for the Cardinals a few years back, and Jordan Montgomery got traded to the Cardinals because the Yankees didn't have a spot in the rotation for him. I mean, he was a 6th starter at that point in time after they got Frankie Montas in the deal. And, he comes back and ends up being a huge part of a good playoff run for a team. The point I'm trying to make is that, Miles Mikolas is a guy who, if he continues to do what he's going to do, is going to be valuable to the Cardinals and about 10 other teams that would love to have a guy like him take the ball every 3rd day. So, playing for the contract, I don't know if that's going to be it. But again, I mean, I think Miles Mikolas is just a guy who has been, high draft pick by the Texas Rangers, never put it together there, leaves the majors and goes and plays in Korea for a handful of years, rediscovers himself and comes back and has this renaissance in St. Louis. And it's been a great thing. I think that guy, he, at this point in time, if you ask Miles Mikolas, who's a wonderful guy, he thinks he's playing with house money at this point in time. He's not focused on the next contract. I mean, he's made a lot of money in his career at this point in time. And I think he's having fun. I think he wants to win. He'd love to make up for a couple of bad years where he was getting paid a lot with this team. And so, I just think it's been a fun run. Is it going to last the whole year? I don't know. Again, it's the same, like we talked about, Stefan. He's earned the runway to see where this takes him, I think. And, at this point in time, this entire pitching staff, I mean, I feel good about every single guy taking the ball at this point in time, which if you would have told me that in, March, that I'd feel this good about this rotation, I mean, I would have told you you were smoking something, but they have been fantastic. There's no two ways about it.
They have been great. And Miles Mikolas is almost going to be like Eric Fetty was last year for the White Sox, really appealing for a lot of different teams. Now it's time to preview game number 2. Tomorrow is going to be Matthew Liberator versus Merrill Kelly, who to me is like a younger version of Miles Mikolas. Went overseas, reinvented himself, and became one of the elite starters in the National League. Liberator has been great this season. What do you make of tomorrow's matchup? So
this is the, I always have this, my sort of out of the left field theory about certain players in certain games. When you're a starting pitcher like Matthew Liberator at this point in time, right? You hope to get 30, 35 starts in a season. You can't get your mind set on who am I going against, who are we pitching, where am I pitching, that sort of thing. It's go out and do your job. Having said that, Matthew Liberator grew up a Diamondbacks fan. He grew up in Arizona, playing ball with Nolan Gorman when they were young. I mean, I remember when Matthew Liberator made the start against Tampa, right? This is 2 years ago. The team that traded him went out and looked like the ace he's become. And then he, hits. I think Matthew Liberator is going to be really, really motivated tomorrow. I think we might see even a better version, which is hard to say because Liberator has been so good. So I looked for Matthew Liberator to go out there and throw 6+, maybe get 8-9 strikeouts. I mean, I think he's going to be dialed in on this one. Merrill Kelly, like you said, same exact thing. And honestly, he's mirroring Mikolas in his inconsistency as well. I mean, there's been times where Merrill Kelly has looked like, he was a Cy Young caliber guy a couple years back. And then last year, he's in and out a little bit. And this year's been a little up and down. And, the stuff plays. He's got a nice little sinker, that can just be, hell on people. And so, but again, what have we seen from the Cardinals, right? They're the team that's going to go out there and go up against guys, even if their stuff is working, and fight through at bats at this point in time. So, I don't know that tomorrow's going to be a real high scoring game. In my opinion, I think you see Liberator go out and throw a really, really good game. And I think you see the Cardinals, smack around 3 or 4 runs and maybe in a similar fashion. And we see another 3-1, 3-2 caliber game, because I just, for whatever reason, I'm hot on Liberator, and maybe I might jump onto my DraftKings account after this thing and go check some lines for what we're going to see tomorrow. But I got a feeling that Liberator throws a good one tomorrow.
I think that's a great feeling, and hopefully a gut feeling that works out for the Cardinals. Merrill Kelly, though sometimes inconsistent, was not his last time out. Got the win in 7 innings pitched, allowed just 1 hit, no runs, 3 walks, and 11 strikeouts against the struggling Colorado Rockies back on May 18th. Liberator, another quality start, 6 innings, 6 hits, a run, a walk, 5 strikeouts. That was on May 18th at Kansas City. So it's going to be a good one at Busch Stadium. Not much more that we really have to talk about after a great night at the ballpark. The City Connect jerseys look great. The ballpark looked filled up. Hopefully it continues for St. Louis, as they have won 14 of their last 18. Chris, you have any final thoughts before we send this to break?
Nope. I think looking forward to tomorrow. Tonight, really, really good win. Again, this is the kind of win that good teams pull out, right? This is, the bad teams find ways to lose these kind of games. The good teams find ways to win these kinds of games. Cardinals won tonight. So again, I mean, we're not at Flag Day yet at Mike Claiborne's "Is this a good team?" benchmark, but boy, I can't help but feel really, really good about what we've seen about a third of the way through the season. So let's just hope it keeps going in that direction.
Well, it looks like if there is going to be a good Flag Day in St. Louis, it will be a fleur-de-lis on the field. So the Cardinals have looked great over the last few weeks. They win against the Snakes at home. A great team in the National League. For everyone here at Sports Hub STL, all content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Chris Pelikan, I'm Stefan Caray. Thank you so much for joining us. Game 2 tomorrow. Cardinals take Game 1 against the D-backs 4-3.